Have you ever seen those tiny embroidered shoes from ancient China, often called lotus shoes? They look like they belong to a doll, but they were actually worn by grown women. Today, let us journey back in time to uncover the complex story behind one of history's most debated practices: foot binding. For nearly 1,000 years, this tradition shaped the lives of millions of women in China. But where did it all begin? The most popular story takes us to the 10th century during the Southern Tang Dynasty. The Emperor Liu was captivated by his favorite court dancer, Yao Niang. She was said to be incredibly graceful, performing a lotus dance on her toes inside a giant golden lotus structure. To enhance her dance, she bound her feet with silk ribbons into a crescent moon or new moon shape. Her unique performance was so enchanting that it reportedly sparked a trend among the elite women in the palace. They began to imitate her, binding their own feet to achieve that delicate, dainty look. What started as an act of performance art by a single dancer slowly began to transform into a symbol of status and beauty among the upper classes. Initially, foot binding was a luxury, a practice exclusive to the wealthiest families. Why? Because it was a visual statement. A woman with bound feet couldn't work in the fields or perform heavy labor. Her tiny, restricted steps signaled that her family was so affluent she didn't need to work. She was a prize, an object of beauty to be displayed. It was a sign of leisure and high social standing. As the centuries passed, from the Song Dynasty through the Ming, the practice began to trickle down from the aristocracy to the general population. What was once a mark of the elite became an aspiration for many. Families of all classes started binding their daughters' feet, hoping to secure a better marriage for them. A daughter with perfect three-inch golden lotuses was considered a highly desirable bride. It was seen as a way to improve the family's social and economic standing. The process itself was arduous and started when a girl was very young, typically between the ages of 4 and 9. The process usually began in the colder autumn or winter months, as the cold would help numb the feet and reduce the risk of infection. First, the girl's feet would be soaked in a warm mixture of herbs and animal blood to soften them. Then, all the toes, except for the big toe, were curled and folded under the sole of the foot. Finally, long bandages, often 10 feet long and 2 inches wide, were wrapped tightly around the foot, pulling the heel and the sole together. These bandages were sewn shut to prevent the girl from tampering with them. The bindings were removed and rewrapped every few days to clean the foot and tighten the bandages further. This process would continue for years, reshaping the foot into a narrow pointed arch. The ideal was the 3-inch golden lotus, a foot so small it could fit into the palm of a hand. The physical consequences were, as you can imagine, lifelong. But for many, the social benefits were seen to outweigh the personal sacrifice. A woman with bound feet was praised for her discipline and her family's devotion to tradition. In literature and art of the time, the lotus gait, the tiny teetering steps a woman with bound feet took was romanticized and considered the epitome of femininity and refinement. It forced a woman to sway as she walked, which was seen as alluring and graceful. But not everyone accepted this practice without question. Throughout history, there were voices of dissent. The Manchu rulers of the Qing dynasty, who came to power in the 17th century, were not Han Chinese and did not practice foot binding. In fact, they tried to ban it multiple times. But the tradition was so deeply ingrained in Han Chinese culture that their edicts were largely ignored. It had become a powerful marker of Han identity. The real turning point came in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. China was facing immense internal and external pressures. Western missionaries and Chinese intellectuals began to criticize foot binding, framing it as a symbol of China's backwardness and weakness. They argued that a strong nation needed strong women and that binding women's feet was holding the country back. Pioneering Chinese reformers like Kong Yue established anti-foot binding societies. They campaigned for natural feet, promoting education and health for women. The movement gained momentum, and natural foot societies sprung up, where members pledged not to bind their daughters' feet and not to allow their sons to marry women with bound feet. With the fall of the Qing dynasty and the establishment of the Republic of China in 1912, the new government officially outlawed foot binding. The practice didn't disappear overnight, of course. In rural and remote areas, it persisted for several more decades. But with widespread public campaigns and changing social attitudes, foot binding finally began to fade into history. Today, only a handful of elderly women, the last generation to undergo the practice, remain as living reminders of this 1,000-year-old tradition. Their stories offer a powerful, personal glimpse into a practice that was once seen as the peak of beauty and status. The story of foot binding is a complex one. It's a tale of beauty standards, social status, and cultural identity. It reminds us how profoundly societies can shape the human body, and how ideas of what is beautiful and desirable can change dramatically over time. It's a painful but important chapter in history, showing us the incredible resilience of the human spirit and the power of social change. Thank you so much for joining me on this historical journey. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video interesting, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into history. See you next time.